Then.
You're on the short chair too.
I thought I saw Frank. Just a second. Okay, well, it's about time. Let's go and start. Jai Ma to everyone, and welcome to Matri Satsang of Sri Anandamayi Ma, who is here, and her chappal paduka are here, the very shoes she wore on her feet, and many relics behind us. So we have Ma with us in more physical ways too. Ah, there's Frank. So the first thing is I always like to announce that we at people's suggestions, we have begun recording these sessions every month, because sometimes people miss them or want to go back and hear some of the readings again. And Renu puts them on our YouTube channel, Anandamayi Ma Satsang West. So we ask everyone's permission to record this, because if people speak, you will be recorded. So we like your permission for that. And we always hope this doesn't dampen your enthusiasm to join in the discussion, which will open the floor for discussion a little bit later after we do some readings about Ma's teachings and life. So, and if you've been here before, you kind of know I have a way of, a liturgical way of running this. In a way, we have a form. And I always like to say, first of all, that our intention in starting this was really to have a place where people whose hearts have been touched by Anandamayi Ma can come to learn more and to have community. I think that's super important. Over the years of my travel for the ashram, I met so many people who Ma had touched their hearts, as all of us have been touched by Ma's heart. That's why we're here. And there was no place, there was not an ashram outside of India. There's so many ashrams of Ma in India. But outside of India, there was no ashram. So we wanted to have a place where people could come like this, have community, have discussion, and know that you matter in this community. So because of that, we take the time, and some people find it tedious, but I think it's wonderful, where we want everybody, we want to introduce everybody. So my name is Mangalananda, for those who don't know, and I'm an Acharya of Ma Sharanam Ashram in central India, Madhya Pradesh, and an initiate of Ma. I received Mantra Diksha from Ma in 1973, and have been living in her ashrams ever since, in her sampradaya with her disciples. So that's why I'm doing this. So, and this is my wife, Gloria, Jyoti, or Sriram Kaur, depending on what mood the day is. And so our co-host Renu will introduce herself first, and then she'll ask each person to just briefly introduce himself. So at this point, since we have a lot of people, we have, let's see, now we just have 16, less than usual. If people could just say their name and where they're from, and then we'll move on. And we'll just so we can all kind of tune in together. And then later on, when we have the discussion time, we have more time to speak together. Okay. So Renu, who are you?
I am Renu. I am from Fremont, California, near you in the SF Bay area. It's just my pleasure to and my honor to host this. So we're going to go down the participant list. We're going to start with Charlotte to start with.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm just from, where am I? I'm in Orange County, California, and Jai Ma.
So good to see you. Good to see you. Good.
You too.
Good. Welcome, Charlotte. Next, we have Anu.
Are you there, Anu?
You want to unmute and introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Everyone, you have to look at
Sorry about that.
Look on the upper right-hand corner of your screen. I'm just telling everyone, before you speak, and just push unmute and then mute again, okay? So Anu, how are you?
Sorry. I'm fine. How are you?
You. Always happy to see you.
So I live in Washington State at this time, and been a Ma devotee for many years.
Welcome. Good to see you, Anu. Jai Ma.
Jai Ma.
Jai Ma, welcome, Anu. Next, we have Arpitaji Robert.
Hello. Can you see me? Okay, because I can't
Yeah,
really.
we can see you. Yeah.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Okay. Arpita, and I live in Delray Beach, Florida.
live there with her. This is Robert.
Hi, okay. I always tell people, Arpita also received Diksha from Ma, and we knew each other back in the day when we were traveling with Ma.
It goes so fast, man. Really does.
It's true.
So fast.
fast. Okay, welcome both of you. And next we
Thank
have
you.
Katia from Portugal.
Hi, hello. This is Katia from Portugal, as Renu said. So it's my honor also. Thank you. Jema.
Nice to see you, Katya.
Jema, I'm very nice to see you too.
Jayma, welcome. Next we have David Herring.
David and Janet? Oh,
Okay,
David?
here I am. You hear me now?
Yes, hi, David.
How y'all doing? I'm David Herring, and this is Linda Safeli, my wife. And we live in Williamsburg, Virginia.
And we are experiencing Anandamayi as a portal to the divine.
Very, very true. Wonderful. Welcome.
Yeah.
Now we're
it
thinking so many familiar faces every month. This is really what we want to do, have community. And those of you who are new for the first time, you're totally, totally welcome here also, anytime. Wonderful. Welcome, David and Linda.
Thank you.
Jayma, welcome. And thank you for the lovely gift. That was awesome. I'll be using those in the morning when it's cold, meditating.
Say you're welcome.
You're welcome.
Very, very sweet. Thank you. Next, we have Frank and Denise.
Hi, everyone. This is Frank,
I'm Denise.
and we're coming to you from Hermiston, Oregon.
Welcome,
Jema.
Denise. Always good to see you. Wonderful. Part of our community.
That was lovely to see them a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that's cool. Last one when you saw it, Frank?
Well, we were in Portland for KD.
Oh, good. Okay. Good.
I got to meet Denise too, so that was awesome. Okay, next we have Greg.
Hi, I'm Greg in New Hampshire. Jema, thanks for being here. And
Hi.
I didn't unmute fast enough. I wanted to say boa noite to Katia in Portugal.
Ah, nice. You speak Portuguese?
Just those two words.
Okay. Good to see you, Greg. Really, always good to see you.
Thank you. You too.
We'll make it up this
Jayma.
when we get back to visiting Pragya's satsang in Boston.
Yeah, be wonderful. Be wonderful. Thank you.
Always good to see Greg.
You too.
And yeah, next we have Haripriya Devi.
There, Haripriya?
Jema, good evening. I'm Haripriya from South Germany, and I have a short question. Mangalananji, do you know if Swami Gurushanana will travel to Yoga Vidya on North in July?
I haven't heard of him leaving India. I just don't think he's going to be traveling anymore. He's not vaccinated. And
Oh, okay. Then
yeah,
it will be complicated.
he hasn't told me. I'll plan on calling him soon. But I doubt it greatly. I don't know if he'll travel.
Oh,
I think those days are.
okay. Yes, okay.
Ah,
Thank you. If you have some news, please let me know, because I'm in contact with Solveig also, and she also say who knows earlier should say to the other one. We are in contact.
okay.
Solveig, yeah.
I'll from soon in India, and I'll find out. But he hasn't told me of any news of traveling. They're just taking care of the school there and moving along.
Okay.
We just-
Okay.
Mannheim, Germany.
Yeah, from Mannheim, Germany, exactly. We have super hot weather here. Yesterday was the hottest day. It's really like Hawaii, or I don't know. America is more hot perhaps, but it was super, super hot here. Really, people cannot go outside.
Wow. Yeah, the whole world's on fire. It's
Yeah, everything is changed. It was unexpected here. Okay, but nice to see you all. Jema. Thank you. Jema.
Really.
Jayma, welcome. Yes, I'm here. Welcome, Hari Priya Devi. Next, we have Helen Moon.
Hi, I'm from Salt Spring Island, Vancouver, Canada, BC, Canada, and I'm delighted to be here. I discovered Ma a few years ago, and I've read a number of the books, and I love chanting. So I'm happy that you're organized this. Thank you. And it's only 14 degrees here. It's cold, the coldest spring we've ever had.
Did you and I meet when I was on Salt Spring Island? I've been there several times.
I don't believe so. Where would have I met you?
I did an ashram at the Hari what's his name?
Harry.
Haridas Baba ashram. I did a kirtan at Haridas Baba ashram.
I don't know, but did you give Sanatan a huge picture of Ma?
Yeah, it could be.
Someone came and gave Sanatan, who was connected there, a huge picture of Ma. And I went to an evening of meditation at his home, and there was this gorgeous, huge picture of Ma. It was somebody who had played with her. He was from the same village, and he had been a child and played with her when he was a child. He was from India.
It definitely wasn't me. I'm trying to remember who I stayed with there on Salt Spring Island. Like it's been too many years now since I've been. It was back in 2012, 2013. Right, I'll let you know. There's some other Ma devotees there. I'll let you know.
There's a lot here, actually. There's we sometimes do chanting, and there's quite a lot. All the people that are connected, there's a Muji group here, and all of them are in love with Ma too.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I love Salt Spring Island. It's a beautiful place. Great. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here for the first time, and very you'll be here. Jai Ma.
And I don't have a portable computer, so I always have to sit far away because it's up on a thing here. And I also hook up to my TV, so if I'm looking the other way, it's because I'm looking at the TV. Anyway, thank you all, and Jai Ma.
Jai Ma, welcome. Next, we have Joshua Gutierrez. Joshua is privy to our backstage talk.
Oh yeah,
he was let in a little early.
Hey there, Joshua.
Okay, yeah, I didn't hear too much. Yeah, so I was hoping that the link from last month was working, so I was just testing things out. But my name is Joshua Gutierrez, and I live in Denver, Colorado.
Welcome, Josh. Welcome.
And you and I, Acharya Mangalananda, we've corresponded via email, and it's finally a pleasure to be able to talk to you and see you. Yeah.
Very excellent.
Yeah. And I've been watching the videos, the recordings. So thank you so much for making those recordings, because they have been helpful, because I haven't always been able to join the discussions.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you could join live this time. And it's true. It was several people suggested it, and Rainey's put a lot of effort into making the YouTube channel and everything. So that's good.
Yeah, it's been very helpful. Thank you.
Good. Jai Ma.
Jai Ma, welcome. I'm glad you found benefit in those. Next, we have Michael Ziv or Ziv.
Yeah, Michael Ziv. I live in Sebastopol, Northern California. Great to be here. Jai Ma.
Beautiful artist too.
Thank you.
Jai Ma, welcome. Nice to see you in person a couple weeks ago too.
Yeah.
Okay. We should mention that at this point, Pragya Ji, who's usually co-hosting with us, actually has COVID right now. So she is made, log on for just a second just to say hi via voice. I'm not sure, but we did want to get prayers out too for her to get over that COVID.
Yeah, after we have our introduction and our first, I'll work in somewhere. We want to actually stop together and as a community, just change some mantras for Pragya, because she, her health is very fragile to begin with. She's had COVID for like 12 days now. She's really sick. So we're worried about her, and we'll all chant together. I think she's here on audio at least. So Pragya, we're going to send some mantras your way. Is that everybody, Rainu, or is anyone?
No, there's still more.
Okay, sure. Okay, good.
Saraswati is next.
Jema, I'm here from Western New York, and it's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Jema.
Oh, Saraswati, always good to see you.
Jema, welcome. Let me see. Next we have Sasha.
Hello, I live in Southern California, and this is my first Anandamayi Ma Satsang. A good friend of mine is a devotee and sent me this link.
Wonderful. Welcome, Sasha.
But he's not on it.
Did you look in the upper right-hand corner? It says start video of your little square. And there'll be a box that says start video. You can push that.
I don't know.
That's okay. You're with us. We like to see people. Dema, welcome. I'm very happy you're with us. We'll start Ma's words and things soon. I always like to introduce everyone because we want to feel this community together.
Welcome, Sasha. Okay, next we have another neighbor in California, Scott Linford.
Hello, my name is Scott Linford from Fair Oaks, California, and I still feel very new in my journey with Ma.
Beautiful. I'm glad you joined us. You're in the right place then.
Yeah. Okay,
we're all new. And we're going to read more about Ma. Yeah, welcome. We're going to read more about Ma and talk about her words and things. So good.
We're all levels, beginner to advanced.
Yes, I don't. we're all children of Ma's feet.
Okay, just kidding.
Swami Bhaskaraji, who was Ma's main Swami, he's the one who sent me to Omkareshwar. I had been with Ma since the 1940s, and he was, I realized we all believe that, wonderful, perfect saint. And one time we were sitting in Satsang with him in India, and our Swami Kedarnath was talking about, he said, Swamiji can say these things from his own experience. He's a great yogi. And there was a silence, and Swamiji just said, I'm only Ma's humble child. No, he said, I'm only Ma's unworthy child. And he said it with such sweetness that it was just a whole sermon in itself. So if he says, well, I'm only Ma's unworthy child, we are all Ma's children, small little children.
Yeah. So next we have Tejinder.
Hi, this is Tejinder and my wife Gitanjali. We are from Toronto, Canada. We are delighted to be here. This is first time we are joining. Jema.
Jema. Very happy to have you.
Thank you.
What part of India are you from?
We are from Chandigarh, north of New Delhi.
Punjab. Very good. Beautiful. So हम हिंदी में बात कर सकते हैं.
हाँ जी, बिल्कुल.
Very good.
Okay, we had a couple of latecomers as well. Ashley.
Jema, everyone.
Oh.
Hi. Jema. I'm calling in from West Palm Beach, Florida. Yeah. So
good. See you, Jema.
Yeah, very blessed to be here. Thank you.
Jema, welcome. Next we have Ayana.
Ayana?
Sorry, I didn't realize it was a new Jema.
Jema.
I'm from London, Ontario, and Canada. Great to be back, Jema.
Very good. So wait, are you from London or Canada? Where are you right now?
I'm from London and Ontario in Canada. Yeah, I'm in Canada.
Which place are you in? You're in Canada now.
London and Ontario. London. It goes by the name of London.
In Canada.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yes, Jema, we're very happy to have you. Very good. So is everybody, make sure we don't leave anybody out. Everybody?
Sorry, my dog's barking. I wanted to stay on mute. Sorry about that. She's here, Cinnamon. She's part of Satsang. Okay, let's see. There's one last person who joined late. Bhavani from Boston.
Oh, good. Bhavani?
Jema. Oh, Jema Bhavani. Nice to see you.
Always good to see you. Very good. So let's begin. I always like to begin reading Ma's words of assurance that she hears us always when we call, when we think of her. She's the self of the self. She hears us always. So these are Ma's own words. She says, I am ever with each one of you, wherever you happen to be. But your vision is tied down to worldly matters, and you have little time to direct your eyes to this body in your thoughts and actions. What can I do? But know it for certain that whatever you do in thought and deed, whether you are near or in distant lands, never escapes my loving attention. Just as at a flash of torchlight, your faces gleam forth in their bold outlines, all your facial expressions appear in my mind when you meditate on me or talk about me or sit down to pray to me. So Ma is slowly with us. And let's tune into her as we usually do. We always sing this one particular kirtan. It's kind of the theme song of our ashram in India because it's called Ma Sharanam Ashram. So we wrote this for that. It's called O Ma Sharanam. Sharanam simply means a place of refuge, a place of safety, that place, our true home. So we say O Ma Sharanam. And let's, as we sing this, let's just feel Ma's presence with us and start to tune into her beyond the internet with the heart. Tune into her with the heart. Om Ma Sharanam. 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 Om Ma Anandamayi Ma, 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 Anandamayi Ma. Anandamayi Ma, 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 Anandamayi Ma. Ananda Ma Sharanam Om Ma
Sharanam
Om 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 Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam Om Ma Sharanam. All together one last time. Om Ma Sharanam. Om Ma Sharanam. Om Ma Sharanam. Om Ma Sharanam. Om Ma. Let's just sit quietly for a moment and just tune into Ma's presence with us. So before we have our discussion, I always like to read things from Ma. I like to read a couple things from Ma's life, and then we'll talk about her words and teachings. This first is an incident from narrated by Srimati Aditi Lodi from the book called That Compassionate Touch of Ma Anandamayi, which is by Narayan Chaudhary. So the author says, it was the summer of 1960, and I was at that time in Bombay, while Ma, to our knowledge, was in Dehradun. There are two very famous temples in Bombay, Mahalakshmi Temple and Amba Devi Temple. I've been to both of them. I and three friends set out in the evening to Amba Devi Temple. As we entered the mandir compound at about 7 p.m., we were surprised and thrilled to find none other than Sri Anandamayi Ma sitting in the veranda of the temple, surrounded by a few devotees, among whom was a sannyasini that was resembling Didi Ma's mother, who always traveled with her, who was sitting just by the side of Ma with an image of Gopal Krishna on her lap. For me, it was quite difficult to believe my eyes, for to find Ma at that time sitting in the veranda of Amba Devi Mandir in Bombay was not only unexpected, but also unbelievable, as according to my latest information, Ma was on that day and time in Dehradun. My mind was agitated at this thought, but I did not mention it to my companions. We hurriedly went near Ma and did our pranams. She then touched my friend Kajal and asked, "You are all Bengalis, are you not?" Kajal replied, "Yes, Ma, we are Bengalis. Are you also a Bengali?" "Why," Ma replied, "do I not look like a Bengali?" I have, of course, heard many people remark that I am not a Bengali. My other friend Bina remarked, "Really, Ma, you do not look like a Bengali." We all then left Ma and proceeded towards the main temple to offer puja. While we were a little away from Ma, we heard from behind Ma's ripples of laughter and these words, "Many people doubt that I am a Bengali. Ma Jagandamba knows who I am. Misled you are, misled you are. None of you could recognize me." Kind of mysterious words. We then entered the sanctuary of the temple and offered our puja. Anxious as we all were to return back to Ma, we hurried out there and ran for that side of the veranda where we had found Ma sitting previously. But we were disappointed to find the place empty. We then went around the entire temple in search of Ma and her party, but they could not be traced anywhere. That year, Ma's birthday celebrations were to be performed in Bombay, and Ma arrived in Bombay in time for the celebrations. I was bubbling with excitement to ascertain whether Ma was physically present on that particular day at Amba Devi Temple. On getting an opportunity to talk to Ma in private, I asked her about it. with an air of disbelief and utter innocence. She put forth a counter question. Were you all then daydreaming on that day? But I insisted on receiving a direct reply. Ma then asked me to call in Didi, and when Didi came, Ma told her, smiling, Didi, just listen to what she says. She tells me that she, along with 3 others, saw Anandamayi Ma at Amba Devi's temple on that day. On hearing the incident, Didi asked me to relate it to others. Out of Ma's infinite karuna, his compassion, and to remove my doubt, Ma said, when the 4 of you saw me, it might be possible. Getting Ma's confirmation, my heart overflowed with joy at the thought that although she was on that day physically present at Dehradun, she appeared before us for a while at Amba Devi's temple in Bombay out of limitless compassion for her children. Jai Ma. So Ma was the mistress of Maya. She could be anywhere at any time. Our dear friend Ashok Kulkarni, who we call Ashok Baba, who just recently passed away, was it this year or last year? Last year, I think. He told me one time that he and his wife were in Pune, because they're from Maharashtra, and they were going to the Pune ashram, and they suddenly saw Ma walking by herself, which was unusual, down the road. They jumped out of the bus and they followed right behind her, and she went all these different places, and they were always just minutes behind her, and they could never catch up to her. They kept talking to people who were there, who had met Ma. They said, oh yeah, Ma was here just a minute ago, and they followed her all morning, and finally got back to the ashram, and they said, oh, we've been following Ma all morning and couldn't catch up. When did she come back? And all the people looked at her strangely and said, Baba, Ma has been here all day. We've been sitting in front of her. She hasn't left the ashram all day. So Ma could play like this. And looks so innocent. I love it when it says she had with an air of utter innocence. Another wonderful thing Ma would do is when there'd be many people sitting in front of Ma, and Ma would sometimes then suddenly just look at a person who wasn't looking at her at the time, and she would look at them very closely and study them and really look at them and just study them and study them. And then the minute before that, she turned her head back, she would look away. And later we talked to the person, we said, did you know Ma was looking at her? She said, oh no, I didn't see. I mean, just the split second she turned back, Ma's looking away, very innocent. Let's read one more incident from Ma's life. And this is from a beautiful book by Vishuddha Didi. Vishuddha is a wonderful devotee of Ma who now is in charge of Ma's Mahasamadhi shrine in Kankal. She's very elderly now, brahmacharini all her life. She might have even taken sannyas by now, I'm not sure. But she is in charge of taking care of the shrine of Ma. And she grew up with Ma. And she grew up in the Kanya Pit at Varanasi, where Ma, which Didi established, Guru Priya Didi established this, and Ma was very much connected with it. She was, every time she'd be in Varanasi, she would be with the girls, training them, taking very loving personal care of every single student there. And so Vishuddha Didi wrote a beautiful book called My Mother Anandamayi. It's not a very good English translation, but it's a book worth getting. And so so she refers to her granny. Her granny was Viraj Mohini, who was one of the early devotees of Ma, and she had the great honor of spending a few months where Ma just took her off by herself, and the 2 of them just wandered as sadhus for months and didn't even let anyone know where they were. And they just took one change of clothes and just wandered as sadhus and had incredible experiences. So she's very close to devotee of Ma. This was Vishuddha Didi's grandmother. So here's the excerpt from the book. Brahmachari Jogeshta told me once that Ma was wandering around the hilly tracts of Uttarakhand with Baba Bolanath, her husband. Bhaiji, we've talked about him. Bhaiji was Jyotish Chandra Roy, who wrote the initial biography of Ma and was, we considered the perfect disciple of Ma. We talked about his life for one whole satsang one time. So Ma was wandering around the hilly tracts of Uttarakhand with Baba Bolanath, Bhaiji, and him, Jogeshta. One night they lay down in a small temple which had no door. Ma said, be alert. Bhaiji said, Ma, why should we fear when you are with us? Hearing this, Ma smiled and said, the thief is also directed by this body. Once I was with Ma at Dehradun. The station master, who was old and retired, came to Ma. He said that about 40 or 50 years ago, he had visited Ma. He respected Viraj Mohini Devi, her grandmother, as his preceptor, because it was she who introduced Ma to him as goddess Bhagavati. Then Ma, pointing towards me, said to him, "She is the granddaughter of Raj Mohini." Granny used to tell me that in the days she was traveling with Ma, she had to learn to guess Ma's khyal. Khyal is the word Ma used for her divine spontaneity. She just, by the divine will, she just was led. She had to learn to guess Ma's khyal to even follow her. Otherwise, how was I to guess her movement, she would say. She said that Ma preferred to pass through the fields instead of following a road. Quote, with her long black hair flowing in the wind, her eyes directed upwards, and her feet hardly touching the ground, it was as if she flew in the void. What a beauty it was. Seeing this, a passerby once thought a daughter had gone mad and left home, and the mother, her, was following her in protection. People used to ask Granny, "Who is she?" Granny always replied, "She is goddess Bhagavati herself." Granny had lost her only son after only 22 days, and her husband died when she was in her 20s. She undoubtedly bore great grief within, but never expressed it outwardly to us. Ma, of course, felt her heart, and one day, as they were roaming together, Ma touched her chest and said, "This body," Ma usually referred to herself as this body, Yeshuriyar, because she rarely said I. She says sometimes, but usually said, "This body says." Ma touched her chest and said, "This body is your husband and son." Beautiful. Several times, Ma told Granny to say that she was her son. Interesting. Once, when Granny was very old, she went to see Ma when she was in Calcutta. In the midst of the vast crowd, she had come for Ma's darshan. Ma spotted her afar off and asked, "How are you?" She replied, "Ma, by your grace, I have no problems. But you said that you are my husband and son both. As the husband and son owe some responsibility towards a wife and mother, you should do me the favor that I go to the next world walking." Ma, looking intensely at her, nodded her head in agreement. When Ma later heard of Granny's passing, fully conscious and talking to people of Ma as she always did, she commented, "This is called true determination. As she said, she did. She went to the next world walking." Later, I heard that when Granny's body was cremated, a sweet fragrance spread all over the cremation ground. People said she must be a great soul to have such a fragrance. Isn't that beautiful? So just a couple of excerpts from Ma's life, because we read and study her words, but it's so thrilling to read Ma's life and read how she passed day by day and how much influence she had on people in such beautiful ways. Beautiful ways. If you haven't, those of you who are new, if you haven't, I wrote a small book about Ma. It's called A Goddess Among Us. It's available from Amazon. And the ashram asked me to write it just as an introduction to Ma. So it gives a basic life sketch of Ma, some of her teachings, some of my memories of being with her. And that's a good introduction too, because it's important to, many people know of Anandamayi Ma from Paramhansa Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, but they don't know her full life. So it's really inspiring to read her life and just the supernatural way she lived. I want to read two very important excerpts from a beautiful, one of my favorite diaries of Ma. This is called, it's in translation, it's called Sri Sri Anandamayi Prasanga in Hindi. It's called In Association with Sri Sri Anandamayi Ma by Amulya Kumar Datta Gupta. And it's written in Bengali. And in Bengali, I think they have something like 20 volumes. It's a day-by-day diary of his decades with Ma. And unfortunately, it's only been translated 3 volumes into English by our friend Brahmatrini Atmananda, who was an Austrian lady who did so much of the translation into English from Hindi and Bengali. But we only have 3 volumes.
And she checked it with Mom.
Yeah, and all the books we have were very carefully checked with Ma, so they're very valid. I lost my train of thought. So anyway, this is a beautiful book called In Association with Sri Sri Anandamayi Ma, and it's his day-by-day interactions with Ma over a course of decades. And he was a householder. He brought his wife and family with Ma, who also loved Ma, but he was a very developed yogi in his own right. So Ma spoke very openly with him. So I want to read two things that just illustrate a very important point with Ma. Ma was talking to him, just an informal satsang. This is back in the 30s and 40s, I think, at this volume. We were talking about Bhayaji. It's too long a story for now. We talked about it earlier about Bhayaji. Bhayaji left his body. He traveled with Ma and Bholanat and Didi and a few people to the difficult pilgrimage of Mount Kailash, which was then in India, which is now in China. The place of where Lord Shiva, it says his energy, energy resides there. So he passed away. On the shores of the shores of Lake Manasarova, he took sannyas in Ma's company, in Ma's presence, and he passed away shortly after. But this is a very important point. What happened? Ma is talking about 3 different times that she saw Bhayaji after his passing away. He passed away with Ma's hand on his head. He repeated his sannyas mantra. He looked at Bhayaji, at Bholanat, and he said, Baba, Ma and I are one. You and I are one. We are all one. He said his sannyas mantra and looked at Ma and said, Ma, 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 and left his body. Good example for us to follow. So this is what I want to read here, a brief excerpt of the last time Ma saw him after he left his body. This is Ma speaking. When I was traveling in Narmada Valley, I beheld Jyotish Chandra. We call him Bhayaji, which means older brother. Jyotish is his name. I beheld Jyotish for the second time. On that occasion, I saw him in a body of light. At the time, the wife of Gangacharan Babu was with me. She could not see Jyotish, but she told me, Ma, I feel that Jyotish is here. He used to love me very much. Perhaps that is why I'm sensing his presence. I, of course, did not reply to her words, but on looking around, I saw Jyotish standing nearby, his weight on one leg with the other leg bent behind. Now, this is the significant part I want us to talk about. The third time I saw Jyotish, his appearance was quite different. It was neither like the first time nor the second, when he seemed like in a human body of flesh and blood, nor in a luminous body like on the second occasion. But it appeared somewhat like a cloud of smoke. In other words, he was just like this vaporous astral cloud approaching Ma. If you had seen it, you would not have been able to know what you saw. But I realized Jyotish had arrived in this particular guise. He was proceeding slowly to merge with his body. But I forbade him first, saying, there is a khayal that so long as this body exists, one has to communicate with it in separation. He nodded in acquiescence, but then later, very gradually mingled with the atoms and subatoms of this body. Thus, Jyotish's deep aspiration was fulfilled. When he saw me for the first time, I used to be heavily veiled and speak only very rarely after drawing a circle around myself. This was in the 1920s, when Ma was still a young housewife. He could not see my face, only small portions of my hands and feet. Even so, he resolved, I shall end up under these very lotus feet. And this actually came to pass. Now, I wanted to talk about this, but let me read a little more. So this is later, they were at the Kishanpur Ashram at Dehradun on 16th of May, 1941. So the author, Amulya Gupta, says, as Jyotish Dada, Bhayaji, and Dada Masai, that's Ma's father, both passed away in 1937, the former in mid-August and the latter in mid-December, Ma continued to talk about this same strain after recounting Bhayaji's end. So Ma says, a similar series of events occurred after the death of the father of this body. Jyotish died in August of that year and merged with his body on the 12th Arghayan, approximately 27th November of the same year. And your Dada Mashai merged with this body on the 5th Magh, approximately 20th January, 1938. You will remember that your Dada Mashai, that's Ma's father, Rainy the Smutty waiting. Your Dada Mashai accompanied us to the Narmada Valley and returned to Calcutta from there. At that time, this body had no intention to visit Bengal, but see how events actually came to pass. Due to Bholanat's urging, I had to go to Tarapet. In the meantime, your Dada Mashai fell seriously ill. On seeing his condition, Jyotish and others came to Tarapet to take me back with him to Calcutta. I told them I would go to Calcutta only on a certain day, but they held that according to the Ayurvedic doctor's opinion, Dadamashai would not last till then. So they insisted on my going to Calcutta with them. I'd already told them I would not enter the house and that I would come away after seeing your Dadamashai from outside. Excuse me. After seeing you, this is what actually took place. After seeing your Dadamashai, see, Ma doesn't even call him my father. She was so detached from everything. She had love for everyone, but she saw herself just as this body. So she was the infinite consciousness. So she calls him your Dadamashai, your father. After seeing your Dadamashai from the courtyard, on arriving at Calcutta, I immediately went to the Birla Mandir in Baligunj. The following day, we were to return to Tadarpet. Before our departure the next morning, I again went to visit your Dadamashai. A number of householders were also staying in the same house. In the morning, they had all lit their cooking kitchen fires, and when I arrived, the yard was full of smoke. They burn the cow dung patties, so it's very smoky. You know very well that up to then, your Dadamashai had looked upon this body as just his daughter and nothing more. But that day, I noticed a change in his attitude. Lying in bed, he was trying to catch sight of this body through the smoky gloom. In the gloom, he could not perceive anything, yet kept on crying, "Ma, Ma," while straining to catch a glimpse of me. There was a moment of our farewell. The other people were all trying to make me eat something, so nobody else noticed the change in attitude of your Dadamashai. See, Mom misses nothing. So her own father was looking at her and trying to have darshan and saying, "Ma, Ma." He realized, just as Bholenath, her husband, at his passing, he'd always said, "Your Ma." He started calling her Ma, Ma. After this, we returned to Tadarpet. We were in Badang waiting for a train connection to Kashi. I asked Swami Akandananda to go with certain instructions and see your Dadamashai. He was not able to, but then it turned out it was then realized that the day I had previously fixed for visiting him in Calcutta from Tadarpet was the day of his death. So see, Ma had the khyal always to proceed perfectly according to the divine will. And so many times, even Bholenath would interrupt that khyal and it never came out right. So she'd had the khyal to go this particular day. She would have been there at his death, but she wasn't. They forced her to go an earlier day. She gave her a blessing and left, and she was somewhere else when he passed away. But she was from about 1,000 kilometers away. She was watching with her inner vision everything that happened at that time. And she let her recounted everything. But her own father was calling her Ma. But here's why I wanted to read this. After that, I caught a glimpse of your Dadamashai on the 5th of Magh, approximately January 20th. I saw him in an extraordinary disguise. His appearance was that of a naked fakir with a turban tied around his head. See how significant it all is. When alive, Dadamashai also often used to threaten us when he had a temper and say, "What do I care? I will put on a turban and go off in some direction or another." I say that sometimes too. From time to time, he had a desire to become a fakir, since his appearance, beheld by me, was that of a fakir. But the nearer he came to me that day after his passing, the nearer he came to me, the more did he resemble a smoky cloud. Later, he slowly and gradually merged with this body. And then Ma says, "Don't think that only those known to you have merged with this body. Others unknown to you have done so also." So I want to read a little bit more from this book, but this is something to think about. It's if we really think of this, it's mind-boggling. It is totally mind-boggling. Who was Anandamayi Ma? Who was she? Who can say that her, what we thought of, they say the avatar has a Chinmaya body, Chinmaya Sharir. That means it's a body that's made of pure consciousness. So I've known yogis, so I've asked, I say, "What do you see when you see Ma?" They say, "I only see this light, which is slightly shielded by the appearance of a physical body." So her body itself was literally divinity. So Bayaji, her own father, Bipin Bihari, merged with her, and she said other people who they didn't know, when yogis came with this final set and she was in the world, they would just become this cloud and merge with the atomic and subatomic atoms of her body and be in total liberation. It's like this is unheard of. We realize it makes you feel just like almost just such awe who Ma was. Ma was literally just a manifestation of divinity. Okay. Now, we usually read some of Ma's word. No, sorry, at this point, usually we'll pass on the program to our dear friend Pragya Hallstrom, who we're going to talk about after this reading, who I think is listening to us now. But Pragya has COVID right now. She's on her 12th day. She's very ill, and we're going to say some prayers for her and mantras after this. But usually we ask Pragya to read one of the satsangs from her new book, which is being published of previously unpublished satsangs of Ma, which she has been working on for several years now, having them translated, having them put in beautiful form. So we have these wonderful satsangs. So usually we have a reading from her, but this time she's ill and can't do that. So I'm going to read a little more, again, from this book by Amulya Kumar Datta Gupta of his time with Ma. And this is from the same conversation we were just reading about. Ma was talking about these incredible esoteric things. And then she was talking about different aspects of mantra diksha and different mantras with him. But then here's what happened next. And this, so we get a little bit of Ma's words that are so practical and so loving. We all need to listen to this because when everything Ma says, we can apply to our own sadhana and our own effort to realize Ma. So the author is sitting there with Ma, and he says, during our conversation, a few ladies and a gentleman arrived. So our talks came to a halt. It looked as if one of the new arrivals was very unhealthy. His relatives, as well as he himself, started talking to Ma about his illness. He was afflicted with a lot of pain in his chest, which troubled him a lot. He had consulted any number of physicians and swallowed diverse medicines, but there was no improvement. After recounting all this to Ma, he ended by saying, Ma, now I am appointing you alone as my physician. Smiling, Ma gently repeated the words, I am appointing you alone as my physician. Then after remaining silent for a while, she said, look, Baba, this body cannot prescribe any other medicine save one. The panacea for all ailments is the name of God. You must repeat his name, take refuge in him alone, and all your diseases will be cured. The illnesses and afflictions that people suffer are the result of their own previous actions, their own karma. Your past actions were such that due to them, your illness cannot be cured, and you do not derive any benefit from medicines. Often it can be observed that some people continue to commit evil deeds, yet do not suffer any setback as regard their health or wealth. Even if one does not immediately undergo any suffering as a result of such misdeeds, yet the consequences remain suspended. The balance sheets of our evil deeds is stored away in minute detail, and the results have to be experienced in due course. All this suffering from disease or grief you must look upon as God's grace. He has created us and sent us to live in this world. And having arrived here, we have completely forgotten him. So from time to time, he inflicts pain on us to draw us back to him. In his presence, there is supreme peace and supreme joy. He is constantly attracting people towards him so as to bestow on them this peace and joy. This is interesting. Listen to this. Those who are guilty of evil deeds, he attracts towards himself by striking them down again and again. And those whose previous actions were just, he attracts towards himself with love and compassion without causing them any hurt. So we should always remember this when we're thinking of doing something adharmic. If our actions are in tune with dharma, God will draw us with love and bliss. And if our actions are adharmic or unrighteous, those consequences will make God force God to hit us a few times to wake us up. So it's our choice. Thus all the I'm continuing Ma's words now. Thus all the sorrow and suffering you behold in the world are an expression of his divine mercy, because it causes people to develop aversion to worldly enjoyment and to turn their minds towards God. Again, consider, you are now worried about your bodily ailments and are most eager to discover ways and means to cure them. But supposing this particular illness is cured, what then? If one ailment disappears, some other disease might attack you after some time, or perhaps some other sorrow might be inflicted on you. Such is the very nature of the world. This is why I constantly insist that you should continuously Call out to God and endeavor to realize him. Once you have found him, no sorrow or suffering can possibly approach you. You will then abide in permanent peace and joy. Now, Ma now asked the man, have you taken Diksha, initiation? Gentleman, no. Have you ever recited God's name? Have you ever read spiritual books such as the Ramayana or Mahabharata? Gentleman, no, I've heard of them and not read them. Ma, well, what sort of work appeals to you? Gentleman, I like most of all to look after my worldly possessions.
He said that?
Yeah. But often even this does not seem attractive to me. Due to my illness, I cannot do justice even to this work. Ma says, Baba, I'm going to give you a few directions and asking you to endeavor to follow them. I'm not asking you to follow these instructions in order to raise any false hopes. You should try to follow them only because it is a whim of this little daughter of yours. Twice daily before meals, you must repeat the Lord's name. Not for very long, just 1 hour or half an hour a day will suffice. You may take whichever of God's names you like best, but it must be the same name each day before meals. At other times, you can also choose any other God's names to sing as in Kirtan, but have one name for repeating. And every single day, you must read some portion of a sacred book, whether it be the Ramayana, Bhagavatam, or Mahabharata. If any day you find that you cannot spare the time due to pressure of work, then just to observe the rule, you may read at least one line or even a few words. Do not allow the rule to be broken. If due to illness you feel quite unable to read, then, glancing at his wife, you, Mataji, must read aloud and let your husband listen. Do not stop reading even if he falls asleep. You should read for as long as it is the usual rule. She's laughing because I read her and she falls asleep. You're his wife, his companion, joined to him before the Lord as his dharma patni. So you must help him to fulfill his spiritual duties. If you do not help him in this, what is the use of being his lawfully wedded wife? You must keep your mind on God. How can this be done? You must hang pictures of God in various forms on the walls of the room in which you stay. You look around our house, that's the way it is. Our landlord once said, you guys have a very interesting way of decorating your house. So she suggests, hang pictures around the walls. And glancing at them from time to time, you should ponder, these are all the likenesses of God. Furthermore, keep photos of great beings in your room. And when you gaze at them and read the life stories of these great men and women, you may feel, oh, how many hardships have these Mahatmas not undergone in order to realize God. Then the desire will awaken in you to do likewise. Besides, it is a good idea to keep pictures of saints and sages in your house because this will exercise its influence on you. I'm a big believer in religious iconography. Considerable inspiration can be derived from their sight and touch. Furthermore, when you go out, whatever you behold, you should regard as an image of God. Suppose you see a beautiful flower. Try to imagine, oh, here is my Lord, blossoming forth in the guise of this lovely flower. If you do not perceive all this with such eyes, but look at it with greed or desire, there is a danger because your mind will be soiled, and hence a process of cleansing and purification will be necessary. At first, this repetition of the Lord's name and reading of spiritual books may not be to your liking, but in spite of this, you must try to attend to it with great regularity. This is a beautiful ending. Ma said all this with such a sweet, compassionate manner that all present were simply charmed listening to her. The gentleman who had come to get some medicine for his various ailments appeared to be highly satisfied when he took his departure. So those are Ma's words. And this is Ma's way of seeing things. Always, Ma said, attend your sadhana, repeat the name of God. Her main panacea, as she said, was the divine name. All the sadhanas known to man played in her body during those 6 years of Bhajapur, what we call her sadhana lila. So she could recommend any sadhana to anyone, and she always gave very personal instructions exactly to who needed it and in what way. But the main thing she talked about was saying the name of God. She said, take any name, take Ram, Krishna, Ma, Durga. We say Om Ma in our lineage. We think of her. She approved of that. She said, this is fine. This is also a name of God. So
And there was also a young companion of her who, although she was a great devotee of Ma, her Ishta was Krishna.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, very few people actually had Ma as their guru. Most people had other gurus, and came to Ma as the Divine Mother, and they had every Ishta, they all had different Ishtas. So, but they looked on Ma as the manifestation of their Ishta also. So yeah, this is Ma's way. So let's see, where are we? Good. So we've read Ma's event from Ma's life, some of Ma's words. Let's open the floor for discussion, because it's important to read Ma's words because we see how she recommends approaching life, approaching our sadhana, and see how she says such an important thing. She says, when we go out into the world, we should try to see everything as a Divine Mother's representation. Everything is Ma, everything is God, or everything is our Ishta. If it's Krishna or Rama or Shiva, or Durga, we see everything as our Ishta. And it was so important what she just said. She says, if we look on it, just even thinking of its beauty, that can pollute the mind because we are beholding a thing and enjoying it. That's duality. She said, look on it all as a manifestation of God. And then we're not separate. Just the other day, Gloria and I were walking by a beautiful lagoon. And I was saying, let's look at it. Remember, there's two ways of seeing this. First of all, we just look, it was a beautiful lagoon. The sun was setting, there was a bird flying over it. First, we just look at it and admire it. Oh, I'm admiring this way. We did that. Now let's look on it the way Ma said to do it. Now we look on it as this is a manifestation of Ma. This is or Ram, she said Ram like that, or of Ram, of our Ishta. This is a manifestation of God's light, and we are not separate from it. We are a part of it. I mean, when you look at things that way, it's so different.
So the third way was that this is a gift from Ma, but that's not even as good as this is Ma.
Yeah, this is the divine. This is my Ishta in front of me. I lived for 12 years in Ma's ashram in Omkareshwar, and the Mahant of the ashram is Sri Swami Kedarnath, who we call Baba. Wonderful, great yogi. He's like my father, and he would always train us in this. He said, "This is Ma's sadhana. It's called." The Vedantic way is called neti neti. You say not this, not this. You negate everything as not being the self to find the self. But he says Ma's way is itti itti. That means all is this, all is this. So he said he would instruct us in this very, very minutely. He said, when you're doing your meditation, your mind is turned inward. You're repeating your mantra with the breath. You're doing whatever meditation practice you do. But he said, when you get up from meditation and you go out to begin your work in the world, don't leave it behind. He said, then your sadhana is, you see everything as Ma. You accept it. You don't try to superimpose some kind of idea on it. You keep your mind calm. And he used the word svikara karma, svikara karana. That means to accept. You accept that this is Ma. You look at it and you just feel this is all Ma. And he said, this is our sadhana in Ma's lineage. We try to see everything as Ma at all times. So it's a beautiful sadhana, and it keeps your meditation going throughout the day. I love just walking and saying the mantra and just feeling the breath connecting you with everything and seeing everything as Ma. That's a practical advice. So let's talk. So if you like to talk about the reading or anything, but let's try to keep our subject very concentrated on Ma, what Ma means to us, what Ma's teachings are. I love to just hear if somebody wants to explain how they came to Ma, how Ma first touched them. That's always good. But let's try to keep our conversation very focused on Ma and her teachings in her life and what they mean to us. So any questions or any observations? I'd like to hear from people. Just Rainy, should we do the thing with the hands up, or what's clear, or should people just unmute?
I mean, there's not that many people today, and doesn't seem like.
If you have a question, press your unmute button and we'll just talk.
You mentioned that Anandamayi Ma approved the Om Ma as a name of God. Did I understand that correctly?
That is correct.
And then she also taught to read sacred texts. Would reading books about her life and her teachings be included among those?
Totally and 100%. I personally, we have many volumes of Ma's words. I try to be reading some of those every day. I usually before I go to sleep. So those words of hers are always revolving in my mind. And I can think, if a situation comes up and I think, what would Ma say? I think, oh yeah, Ma says this. It comes up in your mind. So yeah, it was Bhaiji who we were talking about earlier, one of his early disciples who wrote this beautiful biography called Mati Darshan. It's translated as Mother was revealed to me. He was the one who back in the 1920s, when the first ashram was started in Bengal, they were singing kirtan. Ma always said, sing kirtan as much as you can. They were singing Hari Bol, Hari Krishna, all these different kirtans. And he talked to people and he said, our focus is Ma. Why don't we also sing the name of Ma? So he was the one who introduced singing Ma, 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 O Ma in our kirtans, which we do now. And he was, we could call him the Rishi of this ashram. He saw in his own meditation that by repeating Om Ma, Om Ma, Om Ma, the inner astral form of Ma is imprinted on our spiritual body. That manifests the physical form, the astral form of Ma. So through him, we had that idea. And Ma, see, some people would come and they say, oh, this is unusual. We're singing the name of Ma. And Ma would say, this is also a name of God. She had no ego. So she didn't say, I am. She never said, I am God. She once said, I am Purna Brahma Narayana. But she said, this is also a name of God. And I know several people who she specifically, they asked her, Ma, can we say, oh, Ma, and think of you? She said, yes, this is fine. So Ma is, someone here in the introduction, I think it was Linda, said, Ma is a portal into the divine. And she is. She said many times, she said she was the Vyakta Rupa. That means the manifested form of the aspiration of mankind. She took this body down. She took birth as Anandamayi Ma from the longing of mankind. And so she keeps that form, even though now she's left that body, the physical body is there in Kankal in her samadhi, but she keeps that form and that name, just as Christ did, just as Rama did, just as Sri Krishna did. These great ones keep these forms and names so we can invoke the divine through them. And when we invoke Ma, 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 we're going through to the infinite. And she once said, someone asked her, Ma, what happened? We want to realize you. And Ma said, if you realize Ma, you realize all. So Ma can also be an Ishta, very much an Ishta. She approved of it. We have many people in our lineage who, I received a mantra diksha from Ma. I received the Devi mantra from Ma, but I take it as Ma's own name. And so she's my Ishta as well as my guru. So yeah, to answer your question, does that answer your question or any further questions from that? I think you're muted. Can you unmute?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that does answer the question in terms of reading texts in addition to the Gita or things like that. One more follow-up question. What was Ma's preferred name of God? Because I've seen videos of her chanting Ram or Hari, and then Baiji talks about her chanting Shiva when her husband, questioned why she was chanting Hari, because she was a Vaishnava and he was a Shaiva, and so and she just switched immediately. But so I see that she chants the name of God, obviously, but I've seen and heard of different names. What was her preferred name?
We don't know. We don't think Ma had a mantra itself. That's a good question. Very good question, though. Because a lot of saints from a particular lineage will say, Narayana or Rama or Krishna, because they're coming from that lineage. But Ma, every lineage is her lineage. So as you already know, when she had this khyal, when she saw it was the divine will, that even though she was in total realization from birth, she was supposed to have these sadhanas play through her. And it went through for 6 years. The first thing she did, she knew it was a divine will. She was supposed to do sadhana. And she was at that time 20-something years old, a housewife by external observation. And she didn't have a guru. She didn't know the scriptures. She could barely read and write. So she knew one thing. Her father, who was talking about Dadamashai, who later merged with her, her father was this wonderful bhajan singer. And so they used to sit and sing Hari, Hari, Hari Bol together. And she would ask me, she'd say, Papa, who is this Hari? You say, oh, Hari is Bhagavan, the Lord. So she knew Hari. So she knew that. That's what she knew. So that's what she started saying. She started sitting and saying, Hari, 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 Hari. And then as you were saying, and all these things happened from there. The sadhana started to play out from there. Then she was given many mantras, and later in the initiation, she was giving a mantra. But then at the beginning, Bholanath was a Shakta and a Shaivite, and he was saying, why are you saying Hari? You're no longer a Vaishnava. So she said, should I say, Jai Shiva Shankara Bam Bam Hara Hara? And she said, fine, say that. So then that mantra is now also And Ma later said, this should be sung, it will be for your benefit. So in the ashram kirtan, and all the ashrams on Anandamayi Ma, including ours in Omkareshwar, we sing in the evening kirtan, Jaya Shiva Shankara Bam Bam Hara. Jaya Shiva Shankara Bam Bam Hara. Jaya Shiva Shankara Bam Bam Hara. So you can't say that's Ma's mantra, but she recommended singing it. So to answer that question, I don't think she had a particular mantra because her lineage was eternal. It was infinite. So just like so many saints, they'll recommend Hare Krishna mantra or Ram mantra or Shiv mantra. But so Ma instructed people according to their inner samskara. So to answer the question, she didn't have a mantra that she said. During that sadhana period, she said many mantras came up. And at one point, the Guru Tattva, the principle of the Guru, came out from inside of her and gave her a Bij mantra and went back inside of her. So she was saying this Bij mantra. We don't know what that one is. But there is a particular Bij mantra in our lineage that we're initiated into. I was first given by Ma a Nam mantra. That means a name. And I repeated that for many, many years. And then many years later, by one of Ma's disciples, Swami Bhaskarnanda, came, and he had me initiated into Gayatri mantra because he said, Ma would frequently add things later on. So it came to me through her lineage. So he said, say this morning and evening a lot as part of my sadhana. And then later, our Swami Kedarnath, again, an inspiration from Ma, gave me the Bij mantra, the inner mantra of the Nam mantra that Ma gave me. So now I say that in meditation, and then I say Ma's mantra that she gave me when I'm moving around. So things can change, but so Ma gave each person according to their need. Sorry, is that kind of a vague answer? Okay, Joshua.
No, yeah, that was perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's a good question.
Yeah,
Anybody else have anything you want to talk about or just share with us? This is when we talk about Ma. It's fun. Well, surely someone has something to say.
Charlotte has her hand up.
Okay, Charlotte.
Hey, actually today I went to another church thing and they were talking about the same kind of thing. It's interesting how that happens. They were talking about how God is everything, and there was a meditation where we did where we just tuned into really what does it feel like if everything's already perfect and God is everything, even because we were outside and he was like, even the plane that's going over our head as he was doing the meditation, how that's also God and how everything's perfect the way that it is. And I remember one time, because I spent some years in Jayakula, and I remember one time Shambhavi would say that Ma said that we needed to catch the supreme moment. Could you talk about that? Do you know what that means, to catch the supreme moment?
That's a good question. Very good question, Charlotte. And it is true. See, Ma said nothing new. It'd be very suspicious of anybody who has a new truth, because there aren't any new truths. There are these eternal truths, and each teacher will have their own way of expressing them. And we find a particular teacher will have a way of expressing that appeals to us most. So Ma's way appeals to us most. That's why we're here. But there's no new truth. So yes, true. This idea of seeing everything of God is a very standard, especially in India, way of doing this. Even Brother Lawrence, the Catholic monk, had this method he used called sensing the presence of God. He would sense the presence of God in everything. So this is very, very standard. Ma talked about the supreme moment. Very interesting. Someone else once came to Ma and said, Ma, it says in the scriptures that if you say the name of Ram just once, you attain realization. We've been chanting Kirtan of Ram for years until we make the skies ring with it, and we haven't had the realization. What is this? And she said, you chanted all those times so that you can finally chant it that one time that does it. So yeah, Ma talked about this. She said, it's interesting, even in the Christian Gospels, Jesus talks about how you should be like the servant waiting for his Lord to return, because you don't know what time he'll come back. And Ma said many times, she said, there are very definite stages in the sadhic's life, and they all kind of, at one point in her sadhana, they all manifested in her body. There are stages that we go through, stages of purification, stages of slow awakening, and that's the normal way. But she said, and this is a very important thing, she said, at the same time, full realization can come at any stage, just out of the blue. And we have to be there to catch it. That's the supreme moment. That if we're there and suddenly there's like an opening from our karma, from the grace of God, which is where illumination comes only from the grace of God, but we have to do our part. But if we are in tune with that, if we're doing our part, if we're observing, if we're doing our sadhana, there are these times in people's lives where suddenly we have this moment, the supreme moment, where we can like zip through that portal. And if we're not observant, we can miss it. And then just keep, and this, we don't miss it forever. You just keep going on in your sadhana and slowly unfold, but we missed a great opportunity for advancement. So the supreme moment, from my understanding, is it's outside of time and space, but at the same time, it's when suddenly your sadhana matures, suddenly your total surrender comes to an absolute perfect climax. Suddenly everything is just in place, astrologically, karmically, and suddenly things are in line, and the light of our true nature, our Atma, can come out. That grace can just happen. And we all have that moment when it will come. It will come to each one of us. It's our destiny as human beings. But that's the supreme moment when everything is just in alignment and we realize God. And on one moment, in one level, it's outside of time, but another time, I've asked different people who I believe had realized God. I said, was there a time? They said, yes, it took place on this time, but then I stepped into timelessness. So, so that supreme moment is the moment destined for our realization. And we have opportunities, evidently, by Ma's description, we have opportunities of it at different times in our sadhana. Maybe we've missed a few already. We don't know. We don't know. We could have, but we have to be like real vigilant and keeping our sadhana, and that's where we keep our japa going. We try to keep the japa of the divine name going as much as we can, and throughout our life, throughout our day, throughout our exercises, whether we're peeling potatoes, or it's hard to do it when you're working on a computer. But there are some jobs I find driving is great for doing japa. We try to keep the mantra going so we can be prepared to study because we'll catch that moment. So as Ma said, we say Ram a million times, so we can say Ram that one time that does it. And we do our sadhana every day. We do our japa every day. So suddenly there'll be that moment, that supreme moment when we'll step through that portal into infinity and into our true nature. And then that will be a permanent state. We won't lose that state ever again. Okay, Sheldon?
Okay.
That's a very good question. Yeah. Anyone else have anything you want to share? I always love to hear how people like first have heard about Ma or came to Ma, or Ma reached out her invisible hand and touched their heart. We're all here because we received Ma's grace. Otherwise, we wouldn't be at this satsang. We wouldn't want to even think about Ma unless Ma's first thought about us and touched us with her grace. So how did that happen?
Say something.
Yeah, it's Frank. Hi.
Hi, Jay Ma. We're talking about seeing everything as Ma or whatever God you feel it's in your heart. And one of the things that Ma said that I really like is when she said that everything, this whole earth is God's kingdom. So how can there be any wrong or anything bad in it? So one of the things that I really like, is from the book of Swami Kendarnath. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
His introduction to Sri Ma's philosophy of absolute cognition.
Yeah, I helped type a lot of that text for him.
Yeah, so it's the book right here. And one of the stuff that he talked about in there was the word yada, and meaning what is. So when you sit there and you look at things and you just one of the quotes that I enjoyed too is from the Buddha, where he says, how wonderful, all things are perfect just the way they are. So in that word yada, I actually even started using it as a mantra, as Om Ma Yada. And in that yada, whatever is. And when you sit there and you look at it like that, like you sit there and you just, what is, and that is Ma. It's hard to explain it, but in that feeling of just what is, that peace that you feel when you look at it, when you see things as everything as Ma or Krishna or Radha or Ram, I feel that that's where I sit and I look at it like that, and I feel Ma's presence. And one of the quotes about that Jesus also said, this is coming from the Gospel of Thomas, and he said when they questioned about when heaven was coming, he said, if people tell you that if your leaders tell you that heaven is in the sky, then the birds already preceded you. And he said, but if people tell you that the heaven is in the ocean, then the fish already preceded you. He said, heaven is not here or there or up there. He said, heaven is within yourself and also outside yourself. And in that, if Jesus just said that heaven is within me, then where's God? In heaven. So if he's in heaven, then God dwells in me. So when I see this world and I see everything, I see that everything is God. And everything is, to me, the way I look at it is like you look at it, everything is Mom, you know, and that's one of the practices that I use. And I know the gentleman was talking about what God Ma worship. Ma never had one, because like she said, all paths lead to the one. So whatever name you feel comfortable in chanting or having pictures of, in that form, you will find God or Brahman, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that, Frank. That's really, really true. That's super important. Very, very nice put to it. And let's talk about this some more. That's a really good point, because that goes on with our sadhana within this lineage of iti, everything is Ma. And especially during these, we're in really tumultuous, challenging times right now. You know, we got these wars going on and possible nuclear annihilation of the human race and all this stuff going on, and COVID and all these crazy things. Let's think back in the middle of World War II, which was even worse than now. Someone asked Ma, they said, Ma, the world is so terrible. When will the world be perfect? And Ma says something very important. She said, it already is. The world is perfect as it is. I mean, think about that. And then she later elucidated a little more on that. She said, the world is not meant to be a pleasure garden. It's meant to be a hard, harsh school for reaping karma, for having our destiny to push us forward. So even in the midst of World War II, or in the midst of these things that are going on now, the world is perfect. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's reaping people's karma. It's reaping individual karma, national karma, world karma. And it's all unfolding as it's supposed to, as harsh and as terrible as it looks. But the way to find sanity within it is, like Frank, like you were saying, is when we calm the mind and we try to see everything right now in this moment as Ma, we do experience that. And I think I mentioned earlier that when Swami Kedarnath was leading us in this sadhana, he was speaking in Hindi, he used the verb svikara karna. That means to accept. He said, we're at this time in our so-called normal state of mind, we're superimposing things on the world. If you listen to even like quantum physics, there's no forms. It's just this constant energy. Like I'm looking at this thing and superimposing it's a chair. It's not. It's constantly, it's moving energy, which is taking the form that we can sit in because we think it's solid. But it's not a chair, it's movement. So you go beyond that. Everything is in essence made of this light and energy and movement and sound of Ma. So on one level, the way we do this practice, we don't superimpose that, okay, I'm going to make that, I'm going to look at that wall and see Ma in it. That's superimposing another mental attitude on that wall. And that's not what we want. As you were saying, Frank, we sit quietly, we get the mind calm, we watch the breath, we say Ma's mantra, and then in the state of very calm mind and total receptivity in the moment, letting the mind just rest in the moment and be present. Then we look at that Ma and we accept, this is already Ma. I don't have to make it Ma. This is Ma. And if we do that in the state of receptivity and calmness, we will, as you said, Frank, we'll start to experience Ma right here and now. It's really true. Or I should say Krishna or Rama, whatever our Ishta is, they're all facets, faces of the one Brahman. So it's a wonderful technique that we just very calmly make the mind calm and just try to see everything as being made of Ma's light, and we'll feel Ma's presence even more. There are times when she peeks out and lets her presence be known in beautiful ways, but if we do this, we'll feel her presence more and more. So it's a wonderful.
I wanted to add something too, real quick, from Swami Kendarnath. I can't say his name.
See,
I want to say it in Spanish.
the word is actually there's a long Kedarnath.
Yeah, Baba. I have a lot of love for that man. I don't know what is it about him that just I've seen all his videos. I wish he had more on YouTube. But one of the things he said too is like when you're meditating and you hear a plane or the dogs barking or your children or whatever, and you're like, oh my God, there's so much noise, I can't meditate. And he said, don't look at it like that. Just look at it like, oh, look at God has come to me in this form. This noise that I'm hearing is God or Ma. And this, when you accept it like that, you can sit in meditation and be more at peace because you're accepting it just as it is. And I thought that was really beautiful, and I hope that can help somebody that's having issues with noise. And I have dogs, so they bark all the time. So when I'm trying to sit, I hear a lot of my dogs barking. But at first it was like, man, that's too much noise. I can't meditate. But when I heard him say that, I was like, wow, that's beautifully said. That makes sense. And now when I meditate and I hear those things, I just see, oh, that's Ma coming to me barking, or whatever I'm hearing. That's just Ma, that's Ma. And one of the things I wanted to, I don't know if you can kind of talk more about it, if you know about it, when he talks about yada being what is, or what, I hope I'm saying it right, in the book. I don't know if he ever, I know you say you spent time with him, but I don't know if he ever really talked about that or with you or mentioned.
Yeah, it's a very esoteric. Yada is Ma used that term, even though she spoke either Bengali or Hindi, and she used a lot of Sanskrit terms. I think it may be a Bengali term, but she used the word. She would use it for like the absolute state of yada. It just means that which is manifesting as it is manifesting. It's hard to even describe it. It's an esoteric term. I don't know if I understand it correctly, completely. It's but Ma used that term. Baba talks about it in that book very often. I'll tell you an experience, nice experience I had with Baba, with Swami Kedarnath, the author of that book. We one time, Swami Guru Sharan and I have been trying to get him to go on a yatra with us, a pilgrimage. He was always so busy in the ashram, and he was writing and he was leading the people in the ashram. Finally, he called us one day and said, come, let's go. So we rented a car, and about four sadhus, we just set out and we spent weeks, and we took him various places. We took him to Udakashi, we stayed in Ma's ashram, we took him up to Kedarnath, the shrine. So Kedar Baba went to Kedar Baba. We took him to the great Shiva shrine way up in the Himalayas. And one night we were staying in Ma's ashram in Utakashi, which is high up in the foothills of the Himalayas, very holy place and very sanctified atmosphere. And he was speaking real beautifully. And he told me how his guru had, before he met Ma, the Swami Avadurananda had trained him in Vedanta. And one night he just, after long training, he had just spoken the great Mahavakyas from Vedanta, from the Vedas to him, and he got into samadhi. So he tried it with me, and unfortunately, I don't know if we could work so well. So Baba was sitting in this chair, and I was sitting on the floor in front of him, kind of off the side. And at one point, I think there were a couple of people also were there also, but he said, sit right in front of me. So I sat right in front of me, and he leaned over and he looked at me, he said, there is nothing in this universe but Ma. Ma is manifesting as everything. And you have to be able to see that. And he went on to more of my, he was like imparting something to me. And then he said, he patted the wall and he said, this is not a pillar. This is Ma. And he kept saying, do you see that? Do you see that? And as he was imparting this Shakti pot to me, I was beginning to see like light and everything, you know. And he could say, he did this and that. He kept saying, do you see it? Do you see it? And finally I said, Baba, I see the idea, I see light, and if I still see the forms. And so he kind of looked at me for a while and he said, okay, there's still some immaturity there. Continue with your sadhana. so he wasn't able to put me in samadhi, but I tell you, it helped. I mean, that from that time on, it helped in the in doing this. Yes.
And there's a video of him doing that on YouTube with a pencil. This pencil is Ma.
Yeah.
So make it art.
That was interesting. The first time, one time I asked him and Swami Bhaskaranandaji, who was all Ma's main Swami, wonderful, beloved saint of our lineage. I asked Swami Bhaskarananda, Swamiji, do you ever miss that beautiful form of Ma that we love so much? And he and I were walking, he'd come to the ashram here, it was after dinner, and he and I were kind of pacing back and forth on this veranda. And Swami Bhaskarananda stopped and he said, yes, sometimes, because he was so close to Ma. But he said, but Ma can appear at any time in different ways. And he told me a beautiful story of Ma appearing to him. I asked the same question to Swami Kedarnath. I said, Baba, do you ever miss that form of Ma that we love so much? And he surprised me with his answer. He became very animated. He said, no. I said, really? He said, no. He said, how could I? He said, shortly after I was practicing with Ma, after my diksha from Ma, I was practicing. She gave me this vision and it's never left me. She said, I see Ma everywhere. And he picked up something. He said, this pencil is Ma. This book, he was sitting on his desk. This book I see is Ma. So he said, how can I miss something that I'm experiencing moment to moment? I thought that was a very good answer. So that's kind of the vision. You know, Swami Ramdas of Kerala often said that he said, don't strive for the vision of deities and the visions that come and go, because then they make you miserable when they go. Strive for the vision that you see always. And Ma talked about that and Baba talked about it. He said, the real vision is that which never leaves you. I one time had a very, very profound experience sitting on the top of Mount of Arunachala in Tamil Nadu in Tiruvannamalai, where Ramana Maharshi was. And afterwards, I came down and I went to a very dear friend of mine, Swami Ramanananda, who had a little ashram on the Parikrama Marg there. And I had great regard for him. I just wanted to kind of make conclusions about what I'd experienced. So I told him, I confided in him what I'd experienced. He looked at me very calmly. He simply said, well, now it's just a memory, isn't it? And that was his own advice. So he said, fine, you know, these things happen, but he says, strive for that vision that when you get it, it never leaves you. So that's really our goal is to, but things, and Baba talked about this. He said, when we're doing this practice of trying to see everything as Ma, it is an intellectual concept at this time. We intellectually believe that everything is Ma, but we're not really experiencing it yet. We only experience that in deep samadhi, at the really kind of at the end of our sadhana. But he says, even though it's an intellectual concept we are holding, it's a truth. It's a truth with a capital T. So even though we hold it as a concept, by that practice of holding this concept, everything I'm seeing is Ma. Ma is in everything. Ma is leading me. By holding it, the concept deepens and deepens and deepens, and it goes into the experience of it. It's the experience that we want. There's some people who, in this so-called neo-Vedanta, a real Vedanta is an extremely intense and difficult sadhana. But there are people now, there's some teachers, some Western teachers who say, you're already realized. You don't have to do any sadhana. All you have to do is just say, I'm realized and I'm realized. Ha, ha, ha. It doesn't work that way. There is, yes, it is true. We are realized. We are the self. But the scriptures all say there is what's called a varanya. There's a veil between our external consciousness and this inner treasure of what we are. The veil is made up of the restless mind, desires, delusions that we have to go through to realize the self. And so sadhana is required. But by realizing, by trying to hold this truth, everything is Ma, everything is Ma, everything is Ma, we will come to the realization of it through God's name and through God's grace. And this was Ma's main thing. And we, in our ashrams in India, we studied Ma's words and life so intensely. And Baba has put together this whole series of Ma's words called Vachanamrit. And he often told us, he says, if you study Ma's words, you see the main thing she said is, everything is God. He even has 5 Mahavakyas that Ma frequently use. I don't have them here with me. But she would always say, Sub Bhagavan He, all is God. She would say, oh, there's a Sanskrit term, Dritya Nasti. I can't say it in Sanskrit, but she would frequently say these things. That means everything is God, everything is God. And people would come to her with sorrow. They would say, oh, I'm having this sorrow. And she would say, God has come to you in this form. They would come to her with joy. Ma just won the lottery. She would say, Ma has come to you as joy and wealth. So she would always say, everything that comes to us is God at that time. So that's her iti. This, everything is this. That's her sadhana, is iti. Thank you, Frank, for sharing that, because that's a huge point, and you very well expressed too. Anyone else? We still have a little bit of time. We're too late.
Hello.
Short meditation, but yes, please, anyone. David?
Hello. Yeah. I hear this idea right often, kind of, related to the karma idea. The karma idea. The idea is that sometimes we come here, not sometimes we're working on we're not working on karma, what we're suffering, what we're here to learn something, to further our evolution, not so much what causes suffering, but it might not be karma. Like, for example, someone might want to learn what forgiveness is, to deepen the ability to love and stuff. They want to deepen things, the ability to love and forgive and stuff like that. So they're not, sometimes they're here to learn something, and it's not really stemming from karma. It's something else. Sometimes it is, so it can be not necessarily a karmic thing that they're suffering, it's causing them suffering. It's something else. Do you know anything? Any ideas about that?
Yeah, if I understand your question correctly, I always say this: there's three things that don't exist in the whole universe: luck, chance. I can't remember. I always say it. I can't remember how to say it. There's no such thing as luck. There's no such thing as chance. There's no such thing as this. It's either karma or grace. And there's no punishment. There's no such thing as punishment. We hear in some traditions they say God is punishing you for this and that and that. Karma is not punishment. Karma is only for learning. It's a loving. It's the only motivation of God is love. All the saints have said that. He, she, it. God, the divine, has no other motivation than love to bring us back into the realization of our true nature, which is one with him, her. So when we have suffering, it has to be karmic. Like Ma was saying, we all have evil karma, we all have good karma. Everyone in the world has that. We have some good and some bad. We're a mixture. But anything that comes to us is from some energy that we put into motion through our own actions and thinking. This is karma. So only our own karma can come to us. A great devotee of Yogananda named Gyanamata said, only your own can come to you. Only that which is already yours can come to you. So everything is karma in a certain way, but the reason for karma is not to make us suffer, it's to teach us. So it is true, there are certain times where we have very difficult things. I lived with this, in this one difficult ashram for a long time with this narcissistic Swami, and it was in America. Really difficult time, but there was something I was supposed to learn from that. I learned compassion from that. People have difficult parents, alcoholic parents, abusive. These things all are for a reason. They're karmic because we're burning off that karma that created it, but they come to us at certain times, like you say, for us to learn a particular thing. A person will come at a certain time, an event will happen at a certain time for us to learn a very specific lesson if we are paying attention, if we're trying to stay conscious and observe our life as sadhana, because life is sadhana. Nothing is separate from sadhana. So if we're observing things correctly, we will see it. This has taught me, I've learned something from this. God, I've learned so much from different situations that sometimes are very difficult. And you can learn from pleasant situations too. They don't have to be painful. But like Ma said, those who are in a bad state of mind and have negative karma behind them a lot, God will relate to them by striking them again and again and causing them what looks like suffering, but it's suffering out of love. It's tough love. to make them wake up. And those who are running on more good karma, who have created a lot of good karma, God can draw through kindness and compassion and love and tenderness. So, but it is karma. Karma is the driving force of the universe. It's what makes everything turn and makes everything run its course. But its ultimate goal is for our spiritual evolution, so we can awaken and find and experience our true nature. This is the Divine Mother is drawing us up really from lifetime to lifetime, from form since we were vegetables and minerals and animals. She's drawing us up through this ladder of evolution to come to the fullness of our stature, our real spiritual stature. And then when we realize that, we start working with her consciously through sadhana, through doing sadhana, through calling on God's name, through trying to live consciously, trying to see everyone as Ma. And good, important point. If we're trying to see everything as Ma, who are we going to be angry to? Who are we going to be angry at? Who are we going to be cruel to? We can't. There was a wonderful teacher. He was secretary of the Anandamayi Sangha for years, named Panu Brahmachari. We called him Panu Da. Panu Da was a teacher in a school, in one of my schools in Almora. And in India, sometimes unfortunately the teachers slap the kids. Not in our school, but so there was one student who was being very difficult to him, and he just got frustrated. And he slapped him, and almost immediately Ma was in the ashram across, way away. So someone came and said, "Ma's calling for you." Ma couldn't have seen it, but so he went to Ma's room, and Ma had red fingerprints on her cheek, right where he slapped the student. And she said, "Panu, put your fingers there. They fit." He put his hand on Ma's cheek, and they fit exactly where the red mark on Ma's cheek was. So he realized to strike anybody is to strike Ma. So if we're living this sadhana of trying to see everything as Ma, we have to be kind to people, because we can't be cruel to Ma. So the person who we dislike, someone who insults us, someone who gets in front of us in traffic, that's also Ma. So we have to be nice to. We have to be nice to Ma. So we should be kind to people, which is sometimes difficult. Does that answer your question? But I think everything is karma, I think. But then it is true. Karma is for learning. Karma is for teaching us lovingly how to act and how to proceed towards God. Does that help, Dave?
Yeah, that was helpful. I want to mention one little thing that happened. One time I went to Rishikesh in India, and I went to this cave outside, about 50 miles outside of Rishikesh, that I've forgotten the rishi's name, but
it's called Vishishta Guha. Yeah, I've been there many times.
So I went there, I went in the cave, I meditated. It's on the Ganges River. And then I went down to the river. I looked up the river, and I saw this little sign stuck in the sand, a wooden sign just painted with a free hand. It said cave on it and an arrow pointing. So I said, that's interesting. So I went up there, and there was a man standing by, and he said, cave's over there. That's all he said. And I went to the cave and climbed in it, and I went up to it. It's not exactly a cave, but it's like a recess. It was a perfect place to meditate, where you're up high and you're looking over the river and everything. So I meditated, and I said, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" It felt so wonderful and there in that spot. Yeah, so I wonder what that was. That was pretty neat. So I came back, and then I went, on the way back to the car, I went by the place, the place where I'd stopped to visit the cave, for the Rishi's cave, and there's a little brochure that said the Jesus Cave, and that was what I sat in. It's called the Jesus Cave, and they think Jesus spent time there meditating. It's actually on the internet. You can Google Jesus Cave, and there it is. And anyway, I had no idea about that, but I was experiencing something there, and it was just interesting. That thing. That was an interesting experience.
Oh, no, thank you for sharing that, David. I can tell you more about that cave. In fact,
you know about that cave?
Yeah. Is Gulshan here today? Is Gulshan Paul here today? He's usually always here. I don't think he is.
No, he's not here today.
That's too bad. The last time we were in India, I was in India, Gloria and I were in India, it was before COVID, 2020, March of 2020. Can you imagine? We got back just as the country shut down. Gulshan and I went to that cave. I've been there many times. The Yoga Vashishta, who was one of the great ancient rishis, he was the guru of Lord Rama, lived in that cave and attained realization in that cave. It's about, like you say, about 50 kilometers north of Rishikesh. And it's, I went there many, many years ago first. It's gotten a little bit built up now, but it's in a very rural area. And the Ganga, the Ganges River, the Ganga is flowing next to a beautiful, beautiful place, setting, beautiful. And the cave goes way back. There's a Shiva Lingam there. And most recently, from about the 1940s to 1960s, a wonderful saint named Swami Purushottananda lived there. He was a disciple of Swami Brahmananda, the direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, the great master Sri Ramakrishna. He lived there and he attained his final realization there on Shivaratri night. There's a sign there that says it. So you can go in that cave and sit and meditate. It's very peaceful, very dark and peaceful. And he said that many great souls, Mahapurush, were still meditating in that cave further back, both in physical body and in astral bodies, doing their tapasya. So he actually sealed off some of the tunnels that go further back so they wouldn't be disturbed. So it's amazing to meditate there. And it is true, David, just as you said, I'd read about this before, so I sought out this cave. If you go around the corner, you go down the Ganga, around the corner, and up the side of the cliff, there's a smaller cave that goes back it's more open. They said that's where Vashishta's wife used to meditate in ancient days. And now here's a story. I first read about it. If you've read Swami Ramdas of Kanangad, Kerala, they called him Papa Ramdas. He was a wonderful saint who passed away just in 1963. I've frequently gone to his ashram in Kanangad, and he wrote two beautiful books, one called In Quest of God, where he was just wandering through India, repeating the Ram mantram. And then later in the Vision of God, where after he had a vision of God, and his times in India, he's saying the Ram Nam, Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. In his book, I think it's in the Vision of God, he talks about going to that cave back in the 1930s when Rishikesh was just a little tiny village amidst dense jungle. And he somehow found that cave after going through the jungle. Now you can drive there on a road, but he found that cave, and he was staying in that, they call the Jesus cave now. He was staying in that smaller cave where you had the experience meditating, the smaller cave on the side of the hill. And he was sitting up all night and he was meditating, saying Ram Nam. He was already in a state of realization. And he said, to his amazement, he had a vision of Christ. Jesus came and was sitting there in front of him with one disciple. He relates in his book. It's beautiful, beautiful to read of it. And he had this beautiful vision of Jesus. And he describes what he was wearing in his eyes and everything. So he had the vision of Christ there. I think earlier or later, the wonderful saint Swami Ramatirtha, who later came to America, a great master, one of the masters who came to America in the early days. And I think it was in the 40s, he went there. He also had a vision of Jesus there. And so they looked, and there is a legend, I guess you could say, I don't know if it's provable other than spiritually. Jesus did, from what we know, Jesus did come in those years before, between 12 years old and 30 years old, when he went back to Israel. They have proof both in Tibet and in Varanasi. The Shankaracharya of Jagannath Puri said he has proof that Jesus studied in Varanasi, the particular academy. So Jesus spent time in India, and the legend is that Jesus spent time in that cave, and that's why people have had visions of him there. So that was a very auspicious event that you got to go sit there and meditate. I have a picture of me sitting there meditating just from March 2020, last time I was in it. But thanks for sharing that. That's a very holy place, isn't it? Really a thrilling place to be in.
It was something, to stumble across it.
See, that's the grace. See, also that's grace and that's karma. It was the grace of God that brought you there. So you had that experience. It's beautiful.
I don't know what that man was doing there. This was just kind of like gardening or something. That man, he seemed like to have a job just to say there's he stood there by that little sign. And you could see where someone been burning making fires in there. I don't know if that guy lived there or not.
Yeah, sadhus will stay there sometime. Yeah, it's definitely. You're in Rishikesh, go to Vashishta Guha. It's up north. You can just go by. We even took a bus there one time. There's a bus that goes by it somewhere else. Very wonderful place, and it's so scenic. You know, the Gangas there are so beautifully, and many saints have lived there. India has so many treasures in it that you can discover. Wonderful treasures.
Yeah.
I think our time is up. Ooh, we're kind of going past our time. So thank you all for joining us. What we do at last is we're going to have Darshan and Ma now lives in her photos like this. Ma lives in her photos.
We never did meditate.
David, be sure and mute yourself after you spoke, because otherwise we hear you. So Ma lives in her photos. Let's have Darshan of Ma. I'm going to show some photos of Ma, and we'll sing one more kirtan, and then we'll do a little bit of meditation, and that'll be it for this month. So let's see. I got to do. Okay, let's do the sound first. So you'll have Darshan of Ma, and we will sing a kirtan. I think Vani will put the words up on the screen. In this kirtan we sing Ma's attributes. Anandamayi, overflowing with bliss. Chaitanyamayi, overflowing with consciousness. Karunamayi, overflowing with compassion. Parameshwari, the supreme goddess. Anandamayi, Chaitanyamayi, Karunamayi, Parameshwari. 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 Hey Ma, hey Ma, hey Ma. Om Shri Ma Jai Jai Ma. Om Namah 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 Shri Ma Jai Jai Ma. Anandamayi, Chaitanyamayi, Karunamayi, Parameshwari. Anandamayi, Chaitanyamayi, Karunamayi, Parameshwari. Let's keep the photos of Ma going, but let's sit for a few moments and just do the practice that Ma told us. So we'll sit quietly, and you can either look at the photos of Ma or have your eyes closed, but sit quietly with the spine erect, with the chest held up high, and relax and let the mind dwell in the present moment. And then just watch the movement of the breath, the natural movement of the breath, flowing in and out, without regulating it, just watching the breath. Let the mind sink down into the breath and just feel the movement of the breath. And then once you feel that rhythm, just add whatever mantra you're working with into the natural movement of the breath, the natural rhythm. So as you breathe in, you mentally intone Om Ah. As you breathe out, Om Ah, letting the mantra vibrate in the breath and just sink down into the breath. And if the mind runs away, you just gently bring it back to the moment, the breath and the mantra. And let's just feel Ma's presence through this meditation now for a few minutes. Shri Anandamayi Mata Ki Jai. Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Aviravirmedhi. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tatsat. Shri Shri Anandamayi Mata Ki Jai. Apne Apne Satgurudev Bhagavan Ki Jai. So thank you all for joining us. And we're here every month, same time, same channel.
The video and the donation.
Thank you, Rainey. She's my external memory. Now this is something totally separate from Satsang because we don't have any advertisements in Satsang, but our school in India is called Ma Sharanam Ashram School. We have a Gurukul where we have about 50 boys who we train full time, and then we have a school with I think now almost 300 students, boys and girls, who come during the day and study. And since Swami Gurushan is no longer able to travel, and he and I used to raise money for the school through traveling, and our non-profit Children of Anandamayi Foundation got dissolved at the beginning of COVID because of various reasons, they're really having trouble funding. So if you can help, give any donation, they're doing a fundraising, and we have a very secure app through this thing called Give India. So Randy's going to put in the text first, there's a beautiful video about the school. It's just a short video we made recently about the school. You have the text, the link for that too, Rainu?
I put both the video link and the donation link already in there.
About a 5-minute video about the school. Look at that, and then if you feel inspired to give, you can give through your credit card. It's a very secure app. So anyway, that's my request. If people feel so moved, they can help the school. Okay. And
also, what about the prayers for?
Oh my gosh, we forgot I was going to do it after the meeting.
Shraddha and
yeah.
Pragya.
Thank you, Rainy. Thank you. See, I forget everything. That's one of her jobs is here is to remind me of things when Gloria can't remind me. Our dear Pragya Hallstrom, author of Mother of Bliss, who's always here with us and who always shares readings from a new book, is in her 12th day of having COVID. And she's really sick, and her health is very delicate anyway. So look, let's right now sit. We're sitting at Ma's feet. Let's all think of Ma and pray prayers for Pragya to recover soon and to have health and healing. And let's send out, let's just say, Om Ma, and chant and feel that Ma's energy is going out to her. Okay, so together just go, Om Ma, Om Ma, Om Ma, Om Ma, Om Ma, Om Ma, Om Ma. So we ask Ma to give her holy and blessed energy and health and healing to Pragya Hallstrom. And we all send her our love to all of you know who have been here before. So let's keep her in our prayers every day. And also my dear friend Shraddha Davenport. Shraddha is now in her late 90s or mid 90s. And she wrote the book In Her Perfect Love. If you've read that about Ma, very dear soul, my spiritual Mataji, and I have the honor of being able, I'm going to put her ashes in the Ganga when she does pass away. She is now in hospice. She's in a nursing home in Florence, Oregon. I got her moved into there. And she's now in hospice. They don't expect her to live more than a few weeks. So please say your prayers that she'll have a quiet and peaceful passing in her. She is very suffering from dementia. Hopefully that will leave with the brain that she leaves behind, and she'll rise in full consciousness to her real height. So remember our dear Pragya Hallstrom and our dear Shraddha Davenport before your prayers to Ma, okay? And thank you all for coming. You can, if you want, you can unmute and say goodbye. I'm in the gallery view now where we can see everybody. It's so good to see everybody. It's so good to see everyone's face. This is our community. This is our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just Pragya at the bottom right. She's not putting.
Thank you.
We all give prayers to her.
So that means she's listening.
Get well soon.
Dr. Trajan.
Thank you.
you. Thank you, Mananda and Glupta and everyone, Renu.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
It's
Yeah,
our
thank you,
pleasure,
Rainey, for
Greg.
hosting, and we'll be here every Thursday.
Thank you.
Remember, every third Sunday of the month. Here we are.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Shema.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone, see you next month.
Good night.